Big news, everyone. The Society of Massage Archives is officially a 501c3 nonprofit. Greetings. I am Kirby Clark Ellis, president of the Society of Massage Archives. This is a huge milestone, not just for us at SOMA, but for the entire massage therapy community. SOMA is dedicated to preserving and sharing the rich history of our profession, from rare documents and forgotten pioneers to the stories that have shaped this vital practice. We are making sure that our past is never lost. And now, as an official nonprofit, your support of the Society of Massage Archives means more than ever. Your donations are tax deductible, helping us to collect, digitize, and share the untold stories of massage therapy. Want to be a part of history? Here's how you can help. Become a founding supporter. Join our Founders Campaign and be recognized as one of the first 50 donors who made SOMA possible. Or become a recurring contributor when you pledge $20 or more to help us build and sustain this initiative for generations to come. Finally, you can help us out a great deal by spreading the word. Share this video and encourage others to preserve massage history. Your support ensures that future generations of therapists know where we came from and where we're going. Join the Founders Campaign today at societyofmassagearchives.org and make history with us. The past is in our hands. Let's preserve it, one story at a time. The views and opinions expressed in this podcast do not necessarily reflect those of the Society of Massage Archives. These interviews and commentaries represent the recollections of both the hosts and the guests, and as such, are subject to the occasional slight inaccuracies. The content here is for informational and educational purposes only. You should conduct your own historical research when determining the veracity of any of the statements made within.
Greetings and welcome to the Hands of History podcast, a production of the Society of Massage Archives, where we delve into the rich tapestry of massage therapy's past, explore its evolution, and share the stories that have shaped this vital practice. Today is Monday, October 6th, 2025. I'm your host, Kirby Clark Ellis, and I'm joined today with Ruth Werner. Ruth is an award-winning educator, writer, and former massage therapist who loves to share her passion about the role of bodywork for people who live with health challenges. Her textbook, A Massage Therapist's Guide to Pathology, is now in its 7th edition and used all over the world. She is a columnist for Massage and Bodywork magazine, and she teaches continuing education workshops on pathology, research, and ethics, both virtually and in person worldwide. Her popular podcast, I Have a Client Who Pathology Conversations with Ruth Werner, is available wherever you get your podcasts. Welcome, Ruth.
Well, thank you, Kirby. What a treat to be here.
Yes, I'm so excited. And you were pretty recent. Someone that we had on the podcast, Meg Donnelly, recommended that we get in touch with you as soon as possible. And I'm glad we were able to make this happen. We've had you on our short list for a while before that, of course.
Yeah, me too.
Let's start at the beginning. Tell me what pulled you into the world of massage therapy in the first place?
I didn't want to work in restaurants and I didn't want to have anything to do with computers.
Okay.
So in the early 80s, that didn't leave me with a great many options. I had a bachelor's degree in theater. I was living in Seattle. I was able to get some gigs for free. I was plenty of volunteer work, but nothing I was going to make a living at. I looked at grad school for a minute. It just didn't feel like the right choice for me. I was a nanny for a young family and was sitting one afternoon waiting for the girls to come home from school and looking at a publication called the Seattle Weekly. And I don't know if the Seattle Weekly is still in publication, but it was people from Seattle will know what it was. And on the back was this tiny little ad, go to massage school. And I still remember the phone number that was in the ad. And it was like, oh, well, duh, that's what I'm supposed to be doing. So I actually enrolled about, I don't know, a week or two late. And so had to scramble a little bit to get caught up. But man, I loved it. I just loved the learning part of it. The hands-on work was actually much more challenging for me than I avoided learning anything about science my whole academic career. And now I'm like knee deep in A&P and I couldn't get enough. So, so really I was drawn to it because I was trying to not do things that I knew I didn't want to do, which was deal with restaurants and computers. And it ended up feeling like home right away.
Gotcha. I can't help but notice a common theme with a lot of the people that I talk about, and maybe it's the ones that really rise to the level of being thought leaders in this industry, but theater or some sort of
Performing arts.
Yeah.
Almost everybody that
Right.
I know of. Do you have a background in performing arts?
No, I played Jesus for my church once, and that's about the extent of my theater resume, but no.
But music or anything like that? I mean, if you look at...
I'm a great big fan.
Anne Blair Kennedy has a degree in theater. Nikki Monk has a degree in theater. Whitney Lowe was a professional musician.
Doug
Eric
Nelson.
Dalton was a professional musician.
Yeah.
You know, it just goes on and on. The people who maybe it's those of us who just love to be on a stage.
Yeah. And thank goodness we have people like that, because there are some people that just want to, come in, do their work, and, they don't really, there's a lot of rich learning and stuff, but it just never gets passed down to anyone else or shared with the. It's also, I'm kind of jumping the gun here a little bit, but, that's what I'm sure you could make a connection to sharing those stories that happen in a treatment room with, what do they call it in research, Ruth? I'm blanking this morning. Case studies.
Case reports.
Yeah, case reports.
Yeah.
About work as a nanny. How did you come into that? Was there other work that you were doing previously?
Oh
Or,
yeah, I was a receptionist at an insulation company and they fired me.
oh,
And so I got fired because I said something negative but true about one of the salesmen. And I, went to an employment agency and I said, I was this was in 82, 83, which people won't remember, but it was another recession. My first job out of college was at a 7-Eleven. That was sort of the best I could get at that time without a graduate degree. Anyway, yeah, so I worked as a nanny for several years with this little family. I sort of feel like I grew up with them, and the girls are now in their 40s and they have their own kids and I see them on Facebook every once in a while. But it was a great gig for me because it left me a lot of freedom to go to massage school. And yeah, so, that's what that was.
I like that you kind of tied it into some historical background about it being a time of recession, because it is like the start of the Reagan administration. And when
Right,
people
exactly.
look back at that, they think of it as a time of a lot of prosperity and a lot of abundance in the American economy. But at the beginning, it's a recession, right?
Oh yeah. Yeah, no, I mean, I entered the job market at a really, really bad time to try to enter the job market, especially with a liberal arts degree. All of my friends from college went on to grad school and then into, sort of higher level professional things from there that created a pathway. And I looked at grad school for teaching and I looked at it for theater and could not see myself following those paths, which is ironic because I ended up being a teacher, regardless. So there you go.
Yeah, life has a way of surprising us like that.
Exactly. Oh my gosh, yeah. I mean, I'm a theater major and I'm teaching A&P. I'm teaching pathology. I have to do way more chemistry than I ever, ever, ever wanted to. And genetics and, stuff like that. That's not my thing at all.
It doesn't sound like mine either. Maybe the universe has other plans for me that I am just
There you
closing
go.
myself off to right now.
You got to leave the doors open, right?
It doesn't escape my notice that working as a nanny right before going into massage therapy entry level education for yourself would be that's a caregiving kind of role, being a nanny. And I'm wondering if you feel like there was any sort of transferable skills that you developed as your work with that family.
No, no, not really. I mean, the girls weren't tiny. They were 8 and 10 or something. It was they just the parents didn't want them to be latchkey kids. So, I would go over in the afternoons and sort of just prep the house for the evening. But I will tell you that I grew up in a family culture that was very low touch. And I'm not trying to say anything negative about it. I grew up in a fully functional, loving home, but touch was not a mode of communication. And I felt really hungry about that.
Mm.
And so I think one of the drivers for me to go to massage school was the experience of healthy non-sexual touch. I really wanted to see what that meant for me. And I think an awful lot of people who go to massage school have complicated histories with touch. Either they were touch deprived or they were, the survivors of some kind of neglect or abuse. And to explore that really, really necessary food is a really important part of their finding out who they are. And not everybody who, as we all know, not everybody who goes to massage school ends up being a massage therapist, but that experience is never wasted.
I find a lot of richness in what you said there, Ruth. But the first thing I want to latch onto is you mentioned this hunger. I want to know, did you ever figure out what touch really meant for you? Have you figured it out, or are you still trying to piece that together? And then has that hunger been satisfied?
Yeah. Well, I'm actually, when we use this term touch hunger, I didn't make that up. That comes from the work of an amazing anthropologist named Ashley Montagu, who wrote
Gotcha.
some very important things. And that might be The Power of Touch or something like that. I don't remember off the top of my head. I will warn if you go rushing out to read Ashley Montagu that he's extremely dated and very much a product of his time. And so there's race and ethnicity based judgments in his stuff that would not hold up today. But his identification that humans need to be touched in a loving, non-judgmental, and not necessarily sexual way was something that I glommed onto very early. And, have I met that need? Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and by the time I was a parent and I would get home and my kids would be on me, it was like, oh God, someone just don't touch me. Just leave me, give me 10 minutes before you're climbing on me. And and I have a massage therapist now that I love that. And I am in a loving relationship and that helps. But I think, as a culture, Americans are notoriously low touch and we find all kinds of substitutes for healthy relationships that involve touch. And, some of those coping mechanisms could be things like sports that are analogies for combat. If you think about the appropriate ways for instance, for adult men to touch each other in public, it's violence, it's mock violence, and it's, shaking hands when you greet someone. And that's sort of it. Women are a little bit, we have we have a little bit looser kinds of boundaries about that for what's socially acceptable, but it's still very limited. And if you compare us to other cultures, you will find that in the United States, we are a relatively low touch culture, and I think that doesn't serve us well. And this is one reason that massage really, I think, really, when it became socially acceptable, and I have all kinds of ideas about when and why that happened. I think that's a reason we became so popular. And I remember one time I was coming home from a meeting in Seattle. I was living in Utah at that time, and I had, when I go to meetings, people give me all kinds of things. I go home with a ton of swag, which I don't use because I'm not in practice. But so I had gotten a pair of really beautiful sort of yin yang figured stones to use for hot stones, and they were a nice shape to hold in your hand. It was in my luggage, and the person at the TSA was like, "What is that?" And I said, "Oh, that's going to be hot stones for massage." And she went, "Oh, oh, I love massage." And
Yeah.
it and it and she said it with such longing. And it really struck home to me that, this isn't just for people who are a little fringy. This is everybody is looking at the idea of sanctioned, non-sexual, healthy touch as a good thing that is worth investing in, treating themselves to, looking for.
You've presented me with a few doors that I'm going to knock on, Ruth. So bear with me, and if we have to shut them, that's okay. But I want you to tell me more. First, I'll start with this. I want to know if you have any opinions or thoughts that you could share about why our American culture is so touch negative.
Mhm. Well, we come from the Puritans.
The Protestant
Puritans
Puritans.
left England because it was too liberal.
Imagine.
Right? And so, obviously that's not true for all of us, but the roots of Europe, the European aspect of of the North American culture comes from people who specifically wanted to create a life that was stricter than what they had left behind. And I think that, works its way through. And when you add issues like homophobia and people not understanding the difference between touch, intimacy, and sexuality,
Yeah.
right? Because those things are very close. There's all kinds of overlap in those three things, but they're not the same thing.
Yeah.
And with massage, we do touch and we have intimacy, but we don't have sexuality. But for a lot of people, it's really hard to separate those ideas. And we don't get a lot of support for that. Frankly, I'm not sure there are any cultures that do get an enormous amount of support to say, let's analyze the difference between touch and sex and intimacy. But I think we are particularly bad at that. So that's my take on it. And again, I want to put the filter on North American Europeans. And I say there because I'm actually only like a second generation American. My mother was born in not in this country.
Okay.
You could make an argument that I'm an anchor baby, except that she was 8 when she came here.
Oh, well, hold on now, because genetics, I mean, maybe you could consider yourself an anchor baby, right? I mean, unless I've got my biology mixed up, Ruth, which no one better to be having this mistake with than you, I would suppose. But, women are born with all of the eggs that they'll have.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, that's true. That's true,
So
which is kind of great because it means my grandmother was growing what would become me. I don't, anyway, it's a bizarre thing to think that baby girls are born with all of their eggs ready to go.
let's not open too many of those doors, because already we're already in a culture where we're talking about birthright citizenship and
Yeah.
being born here. What does that really mean? And it's just, tell me, Ruth, you said that you had some ideas about when and where and how massage therapy started to become a little bit more ubiquitous and a little bit more socially acceptable. Can you
Mhm.
expand on that at all?
Well, again, yes, I can. I'd be happy to. And I will do that with the caveat that this is my own little pointy-headed filtered vision of what I observed because I entered the field in the early 80s. I believe that I started massage school in October of 83 and I graduated in April of 84. Right. So it was a whopping, 5 or 6 months of school. And that cost, $350. And that's a different issue. Actually, my first massage table is now my sewing table, so I can see it from here.
Take a picture and send it to us, Ruth.
I will. I will. That's a good idea. When I entered the field, I had to be very careful how I talked about my work
Yeah.
because, especially as a young woman, saying I'm a massage therapist, and I was very careful about massage therapist, not masseuse. Even in Seattle, which was pretty progressive, it was very, very easy for that to be misinterpreted, and certainly have had a few incidents where the person on the table did not really understand what they were getting into.
Right.
But for me, at least, I feel very blessed to say that that was a very rare kind of thing to happen for me. But in my experience, two things happened, and I'm trying to place them in time, mid to late 80s, maybe early 90s. Two things happened that really expanded the appropriateness of massage therapy for the public. And one of them was school clinics that were businesses.
Mhm.
Right. So now you can go get a massage in a place that's only semi-private and where there's lots of supervision
Right.
and that is not very expensive, right? Um, and I have all kinds of opinions on school clinics. We could do an entire podcast on school clinics, another topic, right? But one of the things that the advent of school clinics did was make massage accessible and not scary. Okay. And then, of course, the other big thing that happened that I think, again, pluses and minuses, was the advent of the franchises. I remember the first AMTA convention when Massage Envy was a significant presence, and we were all like gathered in the corners going, Massage Envy, what a stupid name. What the hell is that? This is going to ruin everything, right? And it's a negative connotation kind of name, but my gosh, it opens so many doors.
Yeah.
And I am not coming down pro or against franchises or pro or against Massage Envy. I have many, many, many dear and respected friends who found that these were great places to work. And, one of the peculiar things about the profession of massage therapy is that to be really successful at it, you need to be both really outgoing and also extremely private.
Yeah.
If you're going to work on your own, you need both of those qualities. And what Massage Envy allowed people to do is for those people who aren't super outgoing, who want to just do the work, gave them a way and a place to do that. And sometimes not such a great place, and sometimes a fabulous place, right? And that a lot of that depends on the individual owners of the store, the franchise, right?
Absolutely.
Um, but what it did by creating a national campaign and a brand and this thought of a massage subscription, right? I think it blew down a lot of the obstacles, and an awful lot of people who start who started at Massage Envy or Elements or Hand and Stone or any of the other, franchises got their feet under them enough to break off and start their own business, and clients follow. Or clients who are at a franchise look around and go, "Oh, there are other massage therapists who specialize in my kind of running injury or the fact that I'm recovering from cancer or pregnancy massage or whatever. And so maybe I'll try someone who doesn't work in a franchise." In any case, I think between student clinics that were inexpensive and felt safe because it was less intimate, and the franchises that made it a business model that people could understand, I think those two things really did a lot to raise the profile of massage therapy as not necessarily as a viable profession to join, but as an acceptable way to spend time and money.
Yeah, I love that you share a little bit of what it was like when Massage Envy kind of first came on the scene. Correct me if I'm misunderstanding, but that was like the early 2000s or mid
Oh
2000s?
gosh, no, I think it was earlier than that, but I might be wrong. You'd have to go back and look. I'm sorry, Kirby. That's not the kind of information I hold on to.
No worries. You hold on to a lot of information,
I
so
do, and dates are not among them. So
that's all right. Let me ask you then, was it kind of a universal opinion at the time, though, that, oh, this will ruin everything? Was there anybody who was kind of open-minded to this idea of franchises?
absolutely there were. And and a lot of them were massage therapists who did not want to have to build their own practice. And you could make a strong argument. I don't know the statistics, but you can make a strong argument that Massage Envy and the other franchises employ many more massage therapists than those who are able or willing to work independently.
Yeah. Well, and there's something to be said for taking something that if you're a private owner of your massage clinic, you're a full-time employee. It never really stops at all if you're running your own business. There's something to be said about creating that space for massage therapists who just want to work part-time doing massage. They have other things that occupy their time, right?
Well, and as we know, at least in my opinion, and this is true of many, maybe most of the people that I talk to, massage therapy is a great half-time profession. And when I was in practice, I was happiest when I was 3 days in my office and 3 days in the classroom, and they would cross over. But I liked it best not trying to make a full-time practice out of it, but doing it half-time. It's extremely flexible. You can, within limits, decide what hours you want to work. I mean, you need to be willing to work hours that people want to see you, but and physically it is challenging. You have to be in good condition. I was worried doing it if I tried to do 20, 25 hours a week of massage that I would hurt myself. 5 hours a day was certainly my max, and I would need a day of recovery after that.
Yeah, yeah. Can I ask you a few more questions about franchises? Just because, it's such an interesting thing, and I don't think many people that have either brought them up in these interviews have opened some of the or cracked open some of the doors that you described franchises as kind of this. I love the way that you put this. Instead of calling it a membership, you called it a subscription to massage. I love that. They should take that and run. Yeah, I'm sure there's reasons that they use the word membership. It probably has a tone of exclusivity and, having something special, but subscription. Oh, I love that. A subscription massage. Was that kind of where in private practice, were there things like that, or did this kind of really open some marketing ideas for massage therapists at the time, or could you speak to that?
I'm not qualified to speak to that particularly. Everybody that I knew that was in practice were running either private practices or joint practices, maybe all massage therapists together, or a clinic where there's massage and acupuncture and a naturopath or whatever.
Yeah.
Kind of interdisciplinary. But no one that I knew of had any kind of idea about creating a membership or maybe there would be like a package, buy 10 and get your 11th free or something like that. I was unaware of any other kind of business models, but that doesn't mean they weren't out there. I think one of the things that made me and others nervous is that particularly in the early days, most of the franchises were not owned by massage therapists.
Yeah.
And so these people didn't know how to take good care of a massage therapist. And massage therapists, I don't know if this is still true, but for many years didn't know how to be an employee because that's not what schools teach. Schools teach you to be self-employed and with varying levels of success. It's a different skill set to be a good employee. And I remember it's because Massage Envy was a big supporter of the Massage Therapy Foundation.
Mhm.
And I was the president of the foundation for 4 years. And I went to a Massage Envy a big convention in Arizona where a bunch of owners came and there's inspirational speakers and there's workshops for Massage Envy owners or whatever. And the foundation had a table there because Massage Envy was a supporter. And I remember talking to a guy, and this was at a time, gosh, when would this have been? Maybe 2011, 2012. Not a massage therapist, but saying he would hire 10 people tomorrow if he could get qualified people in his door. So the friction point he thought was that there weren't enough qualified people. The friction point I felt was pay them more and give them health insurance, and they will beat down your door. Because there needs to be upward pressure on pricing on wages, and that was a sticking point I think we still deal with.
Yeah. What I'm hearing there in that example is it's kind of like these conversations you have to have with clients. They come in with their own expectations. You as the therapist have your own understanding of what massage therapy is and its limitations, and then kind of just trying to match where those two levels, it's the same kind of thing with an employer-employee kind of situation, matching those expectations properly.
Yeah, but I think for and some people are really good at that.
Yeah.
And some people are terrible at that. And that's when you have the difference between a franchise that is a wonderful, supportive place to work where you get, they provide your continuing education and they look for ways to sustain you in your practice and to create a working environment where you want to stay, and franchises that just use people up. Really, that comes down to the owners.
Yeah.
And, if I were queen of the world, which to the best, even with my very best efforts, I'm not. I would create more requirements for owners. If you're going to own a franchise, this is the way you treat your employees.
Sure.
But I think that for whatever reason, and this is a level of business acumen I have never pursued, that doesn't happen.
Yeah. Well, being queen of pathology is nothing to sneeze at. So keep working. You'll get to queen of the universe one day. Tell me, this might be my last question about franchises, though. I've heard it said before that when they were introduced, they were supposed to be like this discount of massage. Like you could come in, get your membership rate at a discounted price from what you might be able to get at a private owner. But nowadays we see that a franchise, their prices, or they're way above what your mom and pop, so to say, massage therapist might be offering you at a rate. And I'm wondering if it's always been that way or if that's a fable that's out there.
Couldn't begin to tell you.
Okay.
Couldn't begin to tell you. I can tell you that the massage therapists are not taking that home.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
On the other hand, they're also not doing their own laundry and they're not doing their own marketing, and they usually get free continuing education, and they're not paying rent or utilities. They don't have to have a phone service or even their own website. So it's really a matter of how are you going to pay for the things that need to happen to run to have a practice in massage.
Exactly. I want to thank you for following me down that path of franchise.
Sure.
For a little bit. Let's get back to your individual story, though, Ruth. You heard about the massage school that you would eventually attend through print media.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know if that was pretty common at the time?
Oh, sure.
So many people think print media is dead these days.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't read a newspaper now. Right. So, yeah, in a million years, I would never have found the school in print today. At that time, I didn't even I think that there were actually, I know for sure, one or at least one, maybe a couple of other options. It never occurred to me even to look. I called that number. I mean, a live person picked up the phone and talked to me about what going to school would be like and, all that stuff. And it was like, yeah, okay, sign me up.
Sure.
And then I called my mom and I said, Mom, I figured it out. I'm going to be a massage therapist. And she was, You're going to be a what?
Yeah,
So, yeah, it took her a while to come around on that one.
sure. Earlier in our discussion, you mentioned that you were very careful to use the words massage therapist instead of masseuse. So I'm wondering, was masseuse still pretty common in the vernacular at the time, or was
Oh,
it
yeah.
starting to fall out of favor?
No, you absolutely still see masseuse or masseur. I mean, people don't understand that there's a masculine version of masseuse.
Right.
And that was a way we had to delineate ourselves. This was Washington State. A thing that happened within a few years of my entering the field was Washington State made a law that you couldn't use the word massage therapist without a license number if you were, in any kind of advertising. We felt like that was really, really helpful to delineate massage from prostitution. But I mean, it's an ongoing problem. And of course, now the big issue is, and I'll open this door, Kirby, but I can't go down this hallway with you very far. There are other people who can go further with you down this one. But issues around human trafficking and massage diploma mills continue to be an aspect of the profession that we wrestle with. We are not the only profession that has this struggle. And so I get a little itchy when, less itchy than I used to. There's probably less confusion between massage and prostitution now than there was in the 80s. I think that's really, really safe to say. But it is an ongoing struggle. And I had an interesting experience. I had the opportunity to go to New Zealand, where there were a chain of schools in Auckland and Christchurch and a third city that is escaping me. And that asked me to come and teach. It was awful, let me tell you. It was just terrible. And they had asked me to teach. I think it was a class on research literacy, and one of the arguments that works with American audiences about research literacy is credibility, right? How it builds up our profession and it builds up our credibility, and it helps to delineate us from people who are not doing massage therapy. But you know what? Prostitution is legal in New Zealand, and so the whole issue of delineating massage from sexual activity and from sex work. No shade on sex work; it's work, right? But the importance of saying this is sex work, this is massage, they're different things, is a non-issue in places where prostitution is legal. And so they looked at me like I had two heads because it had not occurred to them that that would be a problem. So. But it definitely was. And when I first got my license in Seattle, there were really, really strict zoning laws. I had one friend who you might want to talk to at some point because she's been in this profession as long as I have, who ran a clinic in Seattle, but it was really hard to get that going because of zoning laws. And that's, much less of an issue now than it was because we have managed to draw a pretty thick line between what is massage and what is not massage therapy.
Good work. What really clicked all of that into place for you where you felt like this is really what I should do? Can you articulate that? What made it all come together for you in seeing that ad?
God slapped me upside the head. No, honestly, I mean, I was a nanny for two little girls. I didn't have enough money. It was the time of your life where you have to weigh carefully if you can spend the quarter to buy the newspaper to look for the job.
Yeah.
Right. And one of the things that was really life-saving about that job for me is I got a meal every day. Right.
Ah,
So
good.
yeah. And I needed a job. Theater wasn't going to do it. I didn't want to go to grad school. And so I was just looking at the back page of the Seattle Weekly and it said, go to massage school, call and a name and a number. And I did. And fell down that rabbit hole. I'm sure that if it had not felt like the right place for me, I would have just said, yeah, nope, this is not it. Try again. Try
Sure.
something else. But was not that expensive. I could afford it. And I went to school for 4 or 5 months or however long it was, and then was able to get a little business and became a teacher, actually became a teacher for that school while I was still a student, because some people joined even after me were having a hard time with the bookwork. And my teacher, whose name is Brian, saw that I was not having a hard time with the bookwork, and he didn't have time to tutor these folks. And so he asked me to work with them, which I happily did. And then ended up working with Brian for 9 years, became the assistant director of the school, and loved every minute of it.
Beautiful. But tell me, did you have any previous experience with massage therapy or any sort of introduction? From some of us, we have at least like media introduction. It's usually played for laughs in popular media, but we at least have something. Do you have any preconceived notions of massage therapy?
When I was in college, I rubbed people's backs. They thought I was good at it.
And that's it.
That's it. That's it. I think that's also when I became aware of touch hunger, when I was with my friends and again, uninformed, but at least it's loving non-sexual touch, right? To share with my friends. And they thought I was really good at it. And I thought, oh, that's kind of interesting. And, let that drop until I needed some work.
Okay. What was the name of the school that you attended, Ruth?
Oh, that was the Brian Udding School of Massage.
All right. And I'm assuming that's the name of the Brian that you
Yes.
have already. Is he still around, Ruth?
I believe he's still teaching some continuing education, but I just turned 65 and he's older than I am. So I don't run into him.
All right. Were there other instructors or was it just Brian at the time?
Oh, at that time it was a one-man show. Yeah,
Okay.
and when we started again in the very early 80s, we didn't really have a set place. We all brought our own massage tables. We met, 2 or 3 times a week, and then one weekend a month for a potluck and an all-day class. And I was with, and again, and my first certificate was 125 hours.
Wow.
That's really my only official diploma, and I'd be hard pressed to find it at this point. But
Well,
I stayed with the school up to when I think they were pushing 800 or 900 hours by the time I left the program, and they had a beautiful space, and we're enrolling. I think we enrolled 3 different cohorts with every start, and I mean we were just turning them out.
gotcha.
It was and many teachers on deck. But one of the things I really appreciated about that work was we did not have separate class. There was not a separate pathology class versus an AMP class versus a massage class. Everything was very, very much integrated. And so you'd spend a muscle lecture on the muscles of the leg, and that's what we're massaging tonight for the second half of the class or whatever. Um, he had a woman that he invited up a few days every year to come and teach the contraindications. Her name was Sue Carlson. She has since passed on. But how every once in a while you meet someone and it's like, oh, I need to do more work with you, right? Every now and then I meet someone it's like, I need to spend more time with this person. And that's what it was like for me and Sue. And so I was a little bit of a groupie and developed a real bee in my bonnet that we were not getting enough information about working with people with health issues. And Brian allowed me the freedom to really develop that as a teacher and become focused on that, even though I was also teaching all the other things. And then when I left the school, because at that point I had 2 children and my husband's job moved us out of Seattle, and you follow the health insurance. Brian gave me a little computer because they'd been updating in the office. So he had a used computer that he gave me, a Mac Classic 2, which I wish I had held on to because it would be a museum piece. And he said, you keep saying we don't know enough about contraindications, and now you're going to be an at-home mom and you're going to have all this time on your hands. My kids were 3 and 5. You don't have time on your hands with that. Yeah. But he said, why don't you take this, write us a text about contraindications, write us something we can use. And he paid me for it. And I did it. It took a year. It ended up being about 200 pages. I had at that time, this is pre-internet.
Right.
Okay. So I had the AMA Family Medical Guide and the Washington Post, which had a really good health section every Saturday, and the public library, and and college level pathology books that were way over my head. But I created a starting place, and I used that later as a writing sample and an author proposal for what eventually became the book.
Awesome. I don't want to go too far. I love all of that kind of behind the scenes stuff.
But
Talk
it's not massage history, so
No, 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 it
my
is.
history.
It is, but I also want to talk about it sounds like the way that you're describing your entry level education, it sounds very freeform, not quite as much structure as we might see these
It
days.
wasn't, it wasn't encapsulated. So you would learn, and I actually discourage this now, but I think we would learn that like the circulatory system on Monday, and then on Wednesday we would do pathologies of the circulatory system, and proceed in that way. I actually think that's a bad idea now because for a bunch of reasons. But it was a tremendous program. It was a really, really good program. And it was also much more integrated with taking the lecture stuff and turning it into what you can do with your hands.
Let me ask you, are there any textbooks or tools that were used as central to your learning at the time?
Yeah, so that's interesting that you should ask that. So we had a book called The Human Body in Health and Disease by an author named Ruth Memler. I'm not sure that she actually wrote the edition that I used because she passed away and it was passed on to another writer, but it was still called the Memler. But The Human Body in Health and Disease, which was written for probably like an advanced high school level, low on chemistry, high on baseline understanding. And it was friendly. It was a good book. I thought it was an excellent book. And we had our anatomy picture book was Clementi, and we used the anatomy coloring book like crazy. I think I went through 3 of them. And the Travell Trigger Point books. What's interesting is years later, when I had this author proposal and I pitched it to a publisher, it turned out that they published all of those books. Because she had asked me, they were just opening a new department in alternative and complementary healthcare, and I had been referred to them by another writer. That's another one of those moments. I remember that phone call. I remember the name of the person, and she said, "What books did you come into the profession with?" And I went, Memler and Clementi and Travell, and she was like, "Yep, yep, that's ours. Yep, that's ours. That's ours." And I think that probably more than it should have got me to yes with a contract with them. But there were no pathology books, and none of those books were for massage therapists. None of them, 0 of those books were designed for massage therapists. Mine was the second or third book by a mainstream publisher, specifically designed for massage therapists. There really was almost nothing before that. And then there was this boom time when the publishers went, "Oh my gosh, here's this profession, and they are starving." And so everybody was all about the acquisitions editors and signing new authors and putting out new products. And the field got very full very quickly. So I feel very lucky to have gotten there before that tidal wave.
Starting the boom, leading the
Yeah,
way.
yeah.
Any specific quirks, memories, surprises, stories you could share from your entry level education? You said it was 125 hours or something like that.
Mhm.
But the timeline also, if I'm not mistaken, October to April, that sounds pretty close to what I think we went to July actually, but not a huge discrepancy between, the length of time that you were in school compared to what I was.
Wow. When did you go to school?
2013 to 2014 actually. So actually even our 3s and 4s are matching up there, Ruth. So
Yeah, with a 20-year difference. That's you must have been in school full time.
yeah. Yeah, it
Yeah,
was
okay.
9
Yeah,
months.
mine was like 2 nights a week and 1 weekend a month. So, and no student clinic, because you would just work with people on your own and then bring in your little documentation that you had done your thing. So,
Gotcha. Did they have you do journaling or just like a client documentation?
yeah, no, not even soap notes. I think we got 1 day on soap notes. I mean, when I went to massage school, draping was optional.
Wow.
And we learned how to drape because, yeah, okay, here's a quirk.
Yeah.
This is exactly what you were looking for. The licensing exam in Washington State at that time that came into being, I think, really while I was a student, actually, was that there was a pretty rigorous multiple choice exam that, this is pre-computer, so you took it with a number 2 pencil. And there was 1 day, and if you were sick on that day, too bad for you, see you in 6 months, right? So you take the SAT test, essentially, is what it was, your multiple choice test. And then there was a practical exam. And for your practical exam, what you needed was a model with no physical defects. So, like, if your model had a scraped knee, sorry, got to find someone else. If your model had a, sprained wrist, yeah, that's not going to work because you needed someone who had no possible contraindications.
Because we don't know anything about them.
Well, and because you don't know what you're going to get asked to work with,
Right.
right? So you take a model with you to a seedy motel by the airport. I am not making this up. To these gross motel down by the airport.
Oh.
And on test day, well, I'm sure they must have done it over the period of a week or whatever, however many people had signed up to take a test. But you would show up and you'd sit in the hallway of this motel with your model and wait to be called. And you'd go into this funky, smelly little motel room and set it, dress your table. Everybody leaves the room, your model gets on the table, and then they ask you your questions. Let's demonstrate Swedish massage of the back of the leg, demonstrate the attachment points of the biceps femoris, put it in a shortened and lengthened position, give it a resist effect, whatever. And there would be at least two, often three or four examiners hovering over you, watching your fingers and taking notes on a clipboard. And then, everybody has flop sweats. And then when the test is over and you leave, and then you go home and you cross your fingers and you hope for the best, and you get some kind of notification in a few weeks. And those poor examiners, I learned later, then had to sleep in those motel rooms.
Nice.
So gross. I mean, what an awful environment. And they would not let teachers be examiners. And I understand that because they didn't want any trade secrets getting back into the schools. On the other hand, teachers are the ones who actually know the attachment points or, and how to ask questions in a way that it's most likely to get at whether this person knows the answers or not and whatever. But it was hard. And that eventually changed, and the schools became responsible for administering practical exams. But so fraught and so emotional and so not like anything like a real massage setting. And I understood the need. They wanted to demonstrate rigor in testing and making sure that the bar to cross into the profession was set at a reasonable level. And that is, of course, the purpose of state licensure. It's not about making sure massage therapists are really skilled. It's about making sure the public is safe.
Right. Thank you for sharing that experience, because that's a unique experience that I don't think many people who are entering the profession now, or even 13 years ago, like myself, have an appreciation for what that must have been like. And two things are coming up for me as I hear you tell that story. First of all, I hear the story of a profession that was making the best out of what little they had at the time.
That's
right?
Absolutely true.
And I think that's the story of massage therapy.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know enough about other adjunct professions if they've also had similar histories to what you're describing there. But the other half that I'm also hearing is, well, of course, it's no wonder that we struggle with still having connotation. Imagine what those hotel operators must have been thinking of. There are these massage examiners coming in. They've rented out one room. Everybody's lined in a hallway, coming in with two sets of people going into a hotel room. And it's no wonder that we have connotations with sex work whenever those are we were
part of our fairly recent history. Yeah. It is an uphill. I mean, we're still battling this stigma, and I think we probably will while human trafficking is a thing. And I want to make it really clear that not all human trafficking is about sex work, and sex work is work. But while there are slots for vulnerable, marginalized populations to make money for someone else, human trafficking is going to be a thing. When you think about other professions and their histories and what they go through, I very often will compare some of the patterns I've seen with massage and wonder how that compares to nursing. And so it would be interesting to look at the history of nursing, which of course goes back to Florence Nightingale and the Crimean War, but to look at how they determined who's qualified, or midwifery or something like that, right? To look at how they, how they set the bar to make sure that whoever's getting this title is safe to work with the public.
Because we're talking about entry level and licensure already, from what I could dig up, it looks like Washington State, and this is really interesting to me, history. They got their first regulation in 1976, the bicentennial. Next year coming up, we're celebrating 250, celebrating is a loose term, 250.
You're marking 250 years.
That's much better. And then you're entering it like basically 7 years later. So it kind of makes sense that, I'm wondering, was there much rich tradition of massage therapy in Washington State at the time? Did you have a sense of that? Or was it kind of feeling more like this fledging kind of thing of, licensure is kind of this new thing, education in this structured way is kind of a new thing? Can you speak to any of that?
The short answer is I don't know. I will tell you that there was a sense, I'm not sure how aware of it we were. It feels like we were probably aware that what was happening in Washington State in the early 80s in massage therapy was important. And if you look at who came out of that, I mean, there's me, there's Drew Beal, who was the founder of Books of Discovery, Diana Thompson, who you should probably talk to.
I'm trying.
Oh, good. Okay. Who, is the queen of soap notes and wrote very, very important stuff on record keeping and has been very, very influential in creating relationships between massage therapy and health insurance, or insurance billing. And a handful of other people who really have left a big mark on the profession. And I don't know why it would be so concentrated in the Northwest, but it just, it happened to be. And I feel very lucky to have been part of that. I will tell you that one of the textbooks we used, and it was more out of tradition than for any other reason, was written by a woman, another Ruth. What was her last name? Ruth Williams, called The Road to Radiant Health. Are you nodding? Are you familiar with this book?
I believe I'm familiar with Ruth
The book about colonics. Completely out of our scope of practice.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure why we ended up. I might even still have it on my bookshelf. But she was, and I never met her, but I saw her once at a convention. There was a there was an AMTA convention in Seattle shortly after I entered the profession, and I saw her. I recognized her walking down the hall. It was like, ooh, there goes Ruth Williams.
Yeah.
And so she and her work felt like part of the lore, if you like, part of the history. The other thing that I don't know how much you have explored on your podcast is the influence of the Esalen Institute. My teacher, Brian, was sort of part of that movement out of Esalen and the human potential movement, and had a huge influence on sort of opening doors around touch. And there's a lot to do with that movement that does not resonate with me. But looking at touch as a form of non-judgmental, welcomed communication is critically important to understanding what massage really is.
For sure.
So it would be interesting in your if you haven't done it yet, to find someone who is a graduate of the Esalen program or the Esalen experience to see what their perspective is.
Yeah, definitely, because Esalen and Swedish, at least what it is here in the States, there's a lot of blurring of the lines between those two.
I'm not sure that I agree.
Okay, tell me more.
To me, what we call Swedish, right? Effleurage, pétrissage, friction, vibration, tapotement, is something you're going to find everywhere in North America. It's sort of the baseline for what you learn in massage school. It's a technique or a modality. Esalen is an attitude about human potential, and about integration of body and mind and spirit, and about, all right, now I'm talking out of my hat because I don't know enough about Esalen to say whether this is true, but I bet it is.
Yeah.
And this is a proponent that I 100% stand by, which is that the body and the mind are not two separate things.
Right.
We have this idea about body-mind integration that from that term, you're starting off wrong-footed. Right. Because it suggests that the body and the mind are two separate things. They're not.
Right.
So the more we become aware of how what's happening in our head and our hearts, our mental and emotional state, is affecting what's happening in our physical state, and vice versa, right? It's hard to have a sunny attitude if your body feels terrible. The more aware we are of that, the better we as massage therapists can become at helping people learn themselves in a really positive way. And that's what we do, don't we? We teach people their body.
That's what everybody who gets up and says, that was wonderful. You did really great. I did so little. I am a glorified tour guide
Yeah.
of the body, just doing what it needs to do. And we just hold the space for it and give you a chance to get some new input in different areas that you just,
To remind you that other possibilities are there and that,
I mean, if I were a congregation, I'd be standing up and clapping with you. That's it. That's all it is.
yeah. That's the thing that makes me very itchy is when people call themselves healers. The only healer in that room is the person on the table.
Yeah, absolutely. And we need to stop being so shy about, sharing that spotlight with the client because it's all that work is going on in there. If you're
That's
relying,
not, yeah, all we are is opening some doors.
exactly.
Glorified tour guide. I like it.
Yeah, that's what I think. When you finished massage therapy, were there any big names in massage back then? Maybe CE providers, other school owners, board leaders in Washington State that you kind of connected or crossed paths with? I know you.
I really did not get pulled into that world, sort of the leadership world, until my book came out and I started looking for opportunities to be a continuing education provider. So that wasn't until 1998. I mean, I was aware of that the AMTA existed and I went to a meeting when they were in Seattle, but that was the extent of that. I got involved. There was a movement in Washington State to coordinate, it was a very sensible movement to coordinate the schools, what the schools wanted to teach, what the schools felt was important, with what the licensing board felt was important.
Yeah.
Because no one had ever actually talked to each other about that.
Imagine that.
And so the schools got together to sort of create a proposal right here, to create a sample curriculum it was a suggestion. And what I remember is that the board looked at that and said, yeah, thanks very much for your input, and then ignored it entirely. So
Great.
it was an interesting experience for me because I was a fairly new teacher at that time, and I was invited to attend, some of those meetings where, yeah, it became very clear to me that, oh, these are just people. I know these people. There's nothing special or unique about these people except that they're willing to put in this kind of volunteer work to make a good thing happen. And so that's what was attractive. Then when I had a more important platform around my own work with pathology, that opened many opportunities for me. And then Diana Thompson recruited me to get involved with the Massage Therapy Foundation. And that then, all the obstacles fell down and I was suddenly hobnobbing with really, really important thought leaders in the profession through the foundation, the AMTA, the ABMP, and also internationally. And that was amazing.
Well, let me ask you then, maybe a question I should have started with before that last one. Was CE requirements a part of Washington State's licensure regulation at the time?
I don't believe so. I don't remember, but I could certainly be wrong. I don't remember it being an issue. I may not have been an issue until national certification came along. I took the pilot test for national certification. Again, number two pencil, fill in the bubbles, let you know in 6 weeks, kind of thing. Yeah, I don't remember continuing education being an issue, but because I was working with the school and doing their workshops all the time, it may not have registered with me that, oh, this is an inconvenience or this is something I have to plan. I remember, and again, could be wrong, but I remember CEs becoming an issue when people were getting their national board certification, because that was very much tied in.
Yeah, and that makes sense in the timeline of things because national certification was in the works in the early 90s, right? Okay, I appreciate that. Let's talk a little bit about transitioning from student to being an educator. You mentioned it briefly, but could we explore just a little bit more on that? Because it's not a unique experience. And it's one that, people have mixed feelings about how quickly transitioning from student to practitioner to educator. Were you doing much after you got your license? Were you doing much of your own thing at the time? Had you separated from the school, or were you always involved in the school? Because you mentioned tutoring as well.
Right. Yeah. No, I started tutoring while I was still a student, continued to do that. In fact, I remember that first summer, Brian had an opportunity to travel and he had a small group of people he was tutoring to get ready for their state exams. And he asked me to take them for him for 1 week. It was the week of the nervous system. I failed so hard. Oh my gosh, I failed so hard. He had to clean up a big mess when he got
Oh.
back because I really messed it up. It's one of those experiences that lives with you for a long time.
Well, but you grow from.
Well, because I decided that's never going to happen again. Yeah. Yeah. No, I never stopped teaching. But I will say, Kirby, that I have a background in teaching in that my mom was a teacher. I had always intended on becoming a teacher. I started my college degree with the intention of becoming a teacher. And then their Masters of Arts in teaching program fell apart while I was still in school. And so I just switched to become a theater major. But I had been doing like student teaching all through high school. I mean, it's really part of my DNA. I get the problem with having a new graduate be recruited to then stand up and be a teacher. That's a big problem for people who have no teaching skills. And I just got lucky. I mean, I think I think I have a natural affinity for it, but I also had some background in this skill set. And to give him credit, Brian was really good about attending my lectures and then giving me very specific kinds of feedback to fit his style and the style of the school, which was really good, right? So, and not all schools do that. Schools will get a clever, well-spoken graduate and say, here, you're going to teach, we'd like for you to teach A&P the next term, and then give them no support. And, that doesn't work. And so, nobody wins in a situation like that. So I would love to see and have seen the beginnings of a sense of need for better teacher supports in the profession, because no one should ever get stuck up in front of a class feeling unsupported. That doesn't help the teacher, and it certainly doesn't help the students at all. And ultimately, the profession loses out. One of the things I did when I was involved with the Alliance for Massage Therapy Education was chair a committee on creating some baseline teaching skills to create a credential for that process.
So then eventually you had two young children at home. You had what Brian considered time off. But you started writing this text on contraindications about 200 pages long, you said. That would eventually become this textbook.
Well, it became the proposal for the textbook. Yeah.
All right. Earlier you mentioned libraries, and I'm never going to pass up an opportunity to sing the praises to libraries. Go and visit yours. This is your reminder to go and check out your local library.
Your library, yeah.
But talk to me a little bit about you felt that you were feeling a need for more understanding of contraindications, but was that something that you were particularly drawn to as an interest yourself?
I didn't think so until I did.
Yeah.
I think one of the reasons that I have been a success, and there are many, many ways to discuss success, and we can talk about that if you want, but by any measure, by all of my measures, I have had a successful career. And I think one of the reasons for that is I was willing and really interested, enthusiastic to do something that not that many other people are interested in doing, which is unpacking that relationship between massage and diseases and conditions. What I do is 100% within your skill set. You could 100% go today and look up osteogenesis imperfecta and figure out what are the decision points about whether or what kind of massage is going to be most appropriate for this person with this rare genetic disease, right? You can do that. But if I've already done it, why should you? So and now, of course, we have AI, and you can go to AI and say, what are the guidelines about massage therapy and X, Y, or Z? And I'm happy to say that I always turn up in the resource list for those things. And I would say that it lacks nuance.
Yeah.
In terms of safety, most of what I read when I do an AI search for something in terms of safety, it's probably okay. but in terms of nuance and key decision points. That's something that is going to be based on your client and your skills. That's not something that AI can provide for you. What I do is provide the variables, right? Here are the variables that you need to consider when you move forward. But truthfully, Kirby, you could do that. It takes practice and sometimes it's really boring. So
Thank God Ruth Werner did it for us.
right. So I figure, again, it's being a glorified tour guide. I mean, you could do it. You could explore the world of osteogenesis imperfecta all on your own, and you might love it. But I've done some of that scut work ahead of time, and that's my job.
So the book came out in 98.
98.
How long did it really take you and do you want to go down the
5 years.
5 years to write it?
Yeah.
And then do you want to talk about maybe like the experience of researching it, writing it, turning it into a proposal, working with a publisher at all?
If you think it would be interesting.
I mean, sure. You think it was interesting?
It was interesting for me. So I called what was at that time Williams and Wilkins, a publisher in Baltimore.
Wow.
Well, I was living in Maryland. We moved from Seattle to Maryland when we followed the health insurance. I wrote the thing for Brian, and then I contacted Brian and I said, I think maybe there might be other massage schools that might be interested in this, and I'm thinking about publishing it. Would that be okay with you? And because he had contracted with me to produce this thing for him, and he kind of said, yeah, sure, whatever. And for a while he got a piece of it. And I contacted you had asked earlier about other names or important people. I had the opportunity and privilege of working with Ben Benjamin for many years at that time. He was in Boston. And I called Ben and said, I have this manuscript. I'm not sure what to do with it. He had 4 books on the market at that time. What do you think? And he said, well, I just got this call from this publisher in Baltimore, which was 40 miles away. And they're opening this new department and they're looking for manuscripts. So here, call this lady. And that was the phone call where I discovered that all of my school textbooks were published by Williams and Wilkins. That was in 1993. She walked me through making an author proposal. It took a while to get to a contract. And in that time, we moved from Maryland to Utah because it was the first book in this new department. And there was a lot of kerfuffle. So I was actively writing it probably from 1995 to 98. And they gave me a developmental editor who was someone I met with every other week. I would submit copy and she'd say, this sucks. And she didn't say that. She said, you might benefit from some more predictable structure.
Yeah.
And so she and I worked out the structure that lives to this day that makes this book so user-friendly. Her name was Cecilia Riley. She was wonderful. Again, pre-internet. Well, no, by the time I was writing the first book, we had internet, but it was pre-Google. I used Alta Vista. And there was very little. I mean, there just wasn't a lot available, and certainly nothing about massage. And I remember early was working on the piece on rheumatoid arthritis. And I knew a little bit about rheumatoid arthritis. I had done my due diligence, but I was online and looking at this article on rheumatoid arthritis, and it was terribly dire. It was all about these horrible things that are going to happen to you if you have rheumatoid arthritis. And I was like, wow, this does not match with my understanding. And I finally got to the bottom of it, and the copyright was a pharmaceutical company. And that was my first experience of, oh, I have to be really careful about my resources. But, this was before the NIH was online and before the such a thing as eMed and before, this was in the dark ages with a dial-up modem. So, while I was working, there were no phone calls.
Well, this is as good a time as any. May I make a comment on your shirt, Ruth?
Sure.
I noticed it was snails, but before I realized it was snails, they kind of look like amoebas to me.
Yeah, they do, don't they?
And then the other half are books.
The other half is books, and on the back
squids. Oh, and then you have that new tattoo also with
and it's actually really hard to get a picture of it, but I have an octopus tentacle on my arm. That's sort of my thing.
I love it. But the amoebas in the books she's giving me Miss Frizzle today, and
yes, it is a little bit. It is a little bit Miss Frizzle.
Sorry, just had to scratch that itch. Talk to me then about I want to talk a little bit about your volunteer work with particularly the MTF, AFMTE, but I'm wondering if there's like a segue or a path to do that. When did you first start to like get involved with these organizations?
Oh,
Like,
it's really easy to point to that because it's all Diana Thompson's fault. So so the book had come out. I don't remember exactly what year this was. I was beginning to get a certain reputation with the state chapters as a continuing education provider. I had done some work with AMTA. And Diana Thompson, who's a friend of mine, went to school a little bit before me, was at that time the president of the Massage Therapy Foundation. And she called and said, we have this committee. It really needs a chair. It's on student case reports. Would you be willing to take this on? And I was like, I don't know anything about case reports. I know nothing about how to read research. Why? Why would you ask me to do this? And she was like, because you can chair a good committee, which was absolutely true. I am an excellent committee chair because I value time. Time is our most precious commodity. I don't waste anyway, blah, blah, blah.
yeah.
This is not a waste of time. This is delightful.
Okay,
So,
good.
so I ended up chairing the committee on case reports, learned an enormous amount. I mean, I got dragged into the world of research literacy, sort of kicking and screaming. There were some really smart people on this committee. They didn't want to chair it, but they taught me so much about becoming research literate. And when I had done that for a couple of years, Diana and probably Tim Herbert at that time came to me and said, how would you feel about being on the board of trustees at the foundation? And I was like, sign me up. And it's partly because at that time it involved 2 trips to Chicago every year. And I was living in Utah. And it's like, yeah, give me an exchange, give me an excuse to get out of Utah. I'll do that. And so I served on as a trustee, and I was the chair of the case report committee and did other tasks for them as well. And eventually, when it was time to look for the next board president, I got tapped for that and had a wonderful year as the incoming president of traveling with Diana to all these meetings, which were both in the United States and a couple of things in Canada. And then there was the International Fascia Congress. And there was, we traveled a lot together, and she introduced me to everybody. And then when I was president for 4 years, and it was an incredible time. It was an amazing time. While I was president of the foundation, this is not my work, but I ended up in place to sign the paperwork. The journal publication of the Massage Therapy Foundation, the International Journal of Therapeutic Massage and Bodywork, was approved for inclusion at PubMed. So that is a huge, most journals at that time would have to have been published for a minimum of 7 years. And I think we were 3 or 4 years in. And I got to sign the paperwork to include our journal, which is now produced by a partnership of the Massage Therapy Foundation and the Registered Massage Therapist Association of British Columbia, RMTABC. They partner together to produce the journal because it's quite expensive to produce, but it is free to use, and it's free to submit to. And those 2 things are not true of the vast majority of academic journals. So I got to do that. I got to, what are some other things? Some astonishing things. ELAP came out while I was the president of the Massage Therapy Foundation. So this incredible partnership between all 7 of the national organizations, some of whom were really not friendly to each other, came together to do this really important job of setting some educational standards. And I got to be part of that. It was amazing. When my term was up, then I shifted a lot of my volunteer work to the Alliance for Massage Therapy Education and got to do some good things there, including chairing the committee that created this credential for teachers. And now I am not doing as much volunteer work. I still actually sit on the committee for case reports. I don't chair it, but I read and rate student case reports every year.
I'm going to walk us back a little bit. Do you know around what time period this was that you were tapped by Diana?
You have to give me a second. I came into the presidency in 2010. I was probably on the board for 5 or 6 years before that. Well, maybe, no, 3 years before that, 27. So it was probably around 2004, 2005 that I stepped onto the case report review committee. Something like that. Somewhere in there.
MTF was pretty new then at that time, right?
No, well, let's see. The 20th anniversary of MTF was in 2010. Can that be right? 1990? So
No.
the MTF started as the AMTA Foundation.
Right.
And now I'm on a little bit firmer ground. And at some point it broke off and became its own thing. It's now much more back under, it is for all intents and purposes, it is now the AMTA Foundation. In 2005, they had their first massage therapy research meeting.
Yeah.
And that was in New Mexico. Yeah, no, it might have been Albuquerque. It was it was Albuquerque. And it followed the AMTA convention. It was like the post-convention meeting.
Gotcha.
Was the Massage Therapy Foundation Research Conference, my very, very first research conference, where I met a ton of people who became very, very important and influential to me. That's the first time I went to a class on how to read a research paper. My dear friend Tracy Walton presented on research about massage and cancer and the how cancer had changed from becoming a terminal disease to a chronic one. And, that's wonderful, except it makes it much harder to study. And yeah, just that wonderful, very, very clear memories from that. And Diana taught me on how on PubMed to do searches for papers by spans of years. And you can look that from 2020, that the number of papers published about massage therapy research was low and steady until 2005. And then it went whoop, because all of a sudden there was interest in massage therapy research. And it's still, compared to other medical interventions, our research base is very, very, very shallow. But 2005, that very first research conference was incredibly influential in bringing the profession into the academic world. And in the United States, we still don't have an academic degree in massage therapy, which is, I feel, problematic. Not everybody who's a massage therapist wants to be an academic, but there should be a route. There should be a pathway for people who want to pursue an advanced degree, a bachelor's, a master's, even a PhD in massage therapy. Because at this point, we have PhDs who are massage therapists who are doing research, but they had to come to it from another route. And I sure would love to see some of those doors opening.
Can I ask you to prognosticate a little bit? Do you see a future?
Right now what's happening in higher education is so changeable. So I'm not going to prognosticate. What I might predict, I'm testing whether I believe this. I'm not sure I believe what I'm about to say. Kirby, I am fabulously privileged. No one could do what I did. Partly because the market is saturated with books, but partly because there is an expectation. I got where I am today without an advanced degree. I have a bachelor's degree in theater. No one would take me seriously at this point without at least a master's or a PhD in allied health or public health or sports training or, whatever. Education, right? My friend Susan Salvo ended up getting a PhD in education because she felt a real need for an advanced degree to take her to the next steps. I never did that, and I don't think it would be possible. And I think it's probably a good thing that dabblers like me, I ended up being a pretty serious dabbler, but that dabblers don't have as many open doors in front of them. And so only the people who are really, really serious about doing this right are going to make big headway in the future of massage therapy influence within social systems, the education system, the healthcare system. I would like to see the availability of an advanced degree in massage therapy. Maybe it would be very, very niche. It would be very niche.
Or niche.
Or niche. Yeah.
I'm going to speak in defense of dabblers. I think they have something. Obviously, dabblers are important, I think. It's
Just they clear the path.
Yeah. And it's work that nobody else is doing yet. Defense of dabblers.
Defense of dabblers. As long as they are serious about staying ahead of the game and not saying, oh, I came up. There's a difference between being a dabbler and being an influencer.
Yeah.
Right? Being a serious dabbler, someone who's serious about learning this, but maybe not within the established systems of learning.
Yeah.
Right? Because I think there are a number of influencers in our profession who are not necessarily, and you may not ask me about naming names, but I think there are a lot of people, I think there are some people who have a reputation for knowledge and rigor that they haven't really earned.
Yeah, I won't argue with you on that for sure. Yeah. And I don't want to name names either. And I won't ask someone to do something I'm not willing to do. So that's absolutely that can be the period punctuation mark there.
Mhm.
Yeah, I won't argue with you on that, Ruth.
And and having an educational system and a hierarchy helps to weed some of that out. But it provides a barrier and an obstacle to people who might be really, really talented, who don't have the access or the ability or the time or the money or the wherewithal to pursue an advanced degree. And this is why I don't think every massage therapist should need to have a bachelor's degree, because the most talented, the most gifted, the most transcendent massage that I've ever gotten has not been from people who are good book learners. And the most clammy, disconnected, unpresent massage that I've gotten have been from people who typically are really, really good at books.
I think you've got to find a way to balance and integrate both, and that there's a happy medium somewhere.
There is. Yeah, there absolutely is.
The Society of Massage Archives invites you to join us for a virtual book club and discussion circle, a monthly 90-minute virtual deep dive into Dr. Patricia Benjamin's book, The Emergence of the Massage Therapy Profession in North America, A History in Archetypes. This isn't your typical book club. It's a conversation where we'll read the emergence chapter by chapter, reflect on the stories, struggles, and triumphs that shaped our profession, and explore how the past informs our current and future circumstances. Discussion circles are moderated by SOMA's Executive Board of Directors, with special guest hosts and Q&A sessions with the author, Dr. Benjamin. Registrants will receive access to the ebook format courtesy of Sutherland Chan School of Massage in Toronto, Ontario, Canada. Virtual meetings will be held on the second Monday of each month, and our first meeting exploring the prologue and Chapter 1 launches on Monday, January 12th, 2026 at 6:30 p.m. Eastern, 5:30 p.m. Central, 4:30 p.m. Mountain, and 3:30 p.m. Pacific. Visit our social media on Facebook and Instagram, or our website at societyofmassagearchives.org to learn more and get registered today. We'll see you soon.
Because we're talking about Diana a little bit, I just want to say my first introduction to both you and Diana, it was during the shutdown of COVID-19. And I think there was maybe some like webinar where you guys were really trying to be like these level heads telling us,
I remember that. That was incredibly important.
Yes.
So we have a mutual friend. Her name is Melanie. She's going to kill me. Her last name just escaped me. She's from Canada. She's from Calgary. And she asked me and Diana to do a webinar for about an hour where we talked about our thoughts and feelings about massage therapy in the context of the shutdown. And Diana and I did that. And for me, that was a starting place for me during the shutdown of figuring out how to be helpful. I felt so blessed during that time because there were things I could do that were helpful.
Yeah.
Because I'm not in practice. I didn't like being in practice. I wasn't very good at it. I am much better off being a writer and a teacher, much, much more able to leave a positive mark on the world. I mean, I wasn't bad and I didn't hurt people, but I didn't like it very much. So the people who like it and who are really good at it are the people who should be doing it. But those are the people who really got sidelined during the shutdown. And what I could do is say, okay, here, let's learn about this together. Let's not panic and let's plan for what comes next. And that was a gift for me to be able to have something useful to do. And I felt, well, between the people who considered me a wrong-headed for being, radically pro-science and pro-vaccine. And there were very few. I mean, I think most people who got frustrated with me just stopped following me and didn't make a deal out of it, and that's fine. But I felt I felt very much appreciated and valued for the work that I was doing during that time. And that webcast, that whatever that was that Melanie Hayden produced with me and Diana was a big catalyst for that shift in our roles during that time.
Yeah, just personally, yeah, it helped me feel a lot better at a pretty particularly scary time.
Yeah.
Because it was still in the midst of shutdown. We didn't know, they were saying, I had started teaching in February for my school in February, and then March we had to make this immediate pivot to online learning a new system. I'm a bad millennial. I don't have a great grasp on technology. So I can't even begin to imagine how some of the elders that were teaching at the time, how they could have ever survived it. And then the student, there's so many people to feel bad for, of course.
Yeah.
That are not me. I'm pretty low on the people that you need to have sympathy for in that situation. But what can we learn from that time, Ruth? What do you think is really important through all of that?
I'm looking for a quote, but I don't think I have it here. I'm going to really mess this up. I didn't make this up. I dreamed of a life of joy. I awoke to a life of service. I beheld that service is joy. It's so much better than that. It's so much better than that. I think what we learn from things like the shutdown or things like the current political climate that we're in is that defiance of the things that are negative takes shape in the joy of service. That's hard. That's hard because the temptation is always just to give in and just despair and just go and turtle. And sometimes we need to do that. We need to just pull into our shell and turtle, right?
I'm guilty.
Yeah, no, 100%. I hear you. But the way we get over ourselves is to be of service to others. And if that takes the shape of doing massage, or if that takes the shape of making a meal for a sick neighbor, or of volunteering with kids who are learning how to read, or doing whatever, that's how we find our way out of those dark times.
Did we learn anything?
No. I think some of us did. Yeah, no, I totally think some of us did, right? I go to church. There are people who mask at church, not because they're sick, but because they worry about spreading something to someone else, right? I think sadly, not all of us. I think many people are poised and humbled by what we went through and are sensitized, if you like, to being ready and aware and alert to the next thing, whether it's a pandemic or having ICE show up in your neighborhood or a government shutdown. Did we learn anything? What does we mean? I think some people did. I think some people very specifically have tried hard to unlearn everything that we learned, which makes me really sad. What I learned is despair doesn't work and giving in doesn't work, but we have to be as gentle with ourselves as we have to be with everybody else.
I think it's important that we start to take reflection points more frequently. It's only been 5 years. Much has been said. Much he said. Some people don't want to look back, but I think it's important to have these, especially the closer to the events that they happen. I think it's important to hold space and really talk about that. Are you able, Ruth, to describe what the shutdown and the pandemic was like for you from your specific vantage point as someone who does understand pathology?
Oh my gosh, Kirby, I am so privileged. I am so privileged. I live in this tiny little town at the edge of the country, right? I am across the street from the beach. It is 3 hours to the nearest airport. And what happened in my life over the shutdown was not did not make a huge difference for me because the grocery stores stayed open. That is the only reason I ever need to go into a public building. I mean, we did church online and did a couple of things, sort of parking lot church things so that you could actually see people through glass and things like that. We learned Zoom, which was incredibly unsatisfying, but better than nothing. I didn't have a job that depended on being able to see people in person. And I had work. I had important work to do to stay on top of what was happening. And I had community. There was a Facebook community of like-minded, science-driven massage therapists who were trying to understand what was going on. But I have a friend during that time who lived in New York, and the refrigerator trucks holding the bodies were on her street. And it boggles me that people are now pretending like that didn't happen. Yeah. So my visceral experience with COVID was really minor compared to most people's. My kids were safe. I was safe. My husband was safe. He volunteers in a bike shop, and that's considered in this little town because bikes are the way that many of our unhoused population get around. So that was considered an essential business. They stayed open. But man, I had him mask and I had him change his clothes at the door, and I had because he was being exposed to people who were really on the edges of society. And we both came through. We didn't get COVID until long after the main surge was over, and we had been vaccinated and, all those things that happened. So I had a very, in terms of heart and emotional, I had a very easy time. In terms of trying to wrap my brain, I was wrapping my brain around two things. One was this pandemic that was unlike anything we'd ever seen before. And the other was people who really refusing to understand, right? And I cannot tell you how many people sent me links to Plandemic or the video of the people with the hairdryer in their mouth, because it will kill all the virus, or the videos of people sticking keys to their forehead after their vaccine because the vaccine magnetized them. I got accused of some really weird things. I mean, because, and it's all a sign of being upset, right? And scared. And I could not understand people using fear on purpose to make other people more scared. Anyway, yeah. So that was that's my reflection. I had a very easy time, and I'm so grateful that I had useful things to do. And I was writing and writing and writing and writing. I mean, almost every day something was coming out. And, then we got the vaccines, and then we had then we had the virus variants. And what does that mean? And then we had long COVID, which is still a big fat mystery, but turning out to have a lifespan, right? That people can say, I had long COVID and now I'm mostly back instead of being permanently disabled. We didn't know. And for a while, it looked like 15-20% of people with COVID were going to be permanently disabled. Can you imagine? And we're talking as if it's all over. It's not over. It's not over. The numbers right now are higher than they have been in many months. We're just not being informed. And so we have to go and look at sewage reports because they're testing, sewer water to look for signs of concentrations of infections. So, one part of that reflection point right now is absolute fury that we have systematically been deprived of the right of being able to trust our healthcare information sources.
Right.
That is infuriating to me.
I can imagine. It would be. Let me ask
People
you,
look at me to provide, accurate and relevant and defensible information, and I don't have access to. Yeah.
Is there any other, this is a history question. Is there any other moment in time that we can look at in terms of just the pathology of COVID-19? Some people will point to Spanish, the influenza of the 20s. Some other people will point to maybe the AIDS epidemic.
Mm-hmm.
Are there others that are similar, comparable, contrastable to what we went through in COVID-19 that you could speak to?
I mean, in the tiniest possible way. The first thing I want to say about HIV that I think we lose appreciation for is that human immunodeficiency virus is not in my first medical dictionary. I bought a medical dictionary when I was in massage school. It was a 2-year-old one, a Taber's. So that would have dated from 1980. Yeah. HIV was not in it.
Right.
Acquired immune deficiency syndrome as a disease, not in my medical dictionary. That's how recent this was. We, again, are being deprived of accurate information about how much of an issue it is now.
Sure.
Certainly much less than it used to be, and in very different places than it used to. It used to be something we associated with big coastal cities. Now it's the majority number of new cases are in among males having sex with males in the South. And that has to do with education and culture and a bunch of things. Yeah. One thing that happened while I, in the process of writing editions that was an amazing thing to see, and you may or may not remember this, was West Nile virus. Do you remember West Nile virus?
Sure. Ringing a bell anyway.
So West Nile virus is a type of encephalitis, so inflammation of the brain. And the virus is spread by mosquitoes. And I remember watching this happen and documenting it over time in the book. Oh, and then I can talk about another one as well. But it was first documented in New York, and it made some people really sick and paralyzed. And it was something they had never seen before. But then they tracked it back to the fact, let me see if I can get this right. It was being spread at the same time that people were getting sick with a type of encephalitis that hadn't been seen before. There was an enormous kill-off of crows and other corvids, and a bunch of horses got really sick. And this all happened at the same time. And some very, very smart people put these clues together to figure out, okay, it's mosquitoes that are biting horses, and they're biting crows, and they're biting people. And that's how this disease is spreading. And then we watched it march across the country over the next couple of years. And then, the mosquito mitigation systems and stuff basically managed it. But some people got sick, and a few of them died. And it was fascinating to watch this illness move geographically across the country and spread among birds and other species until we really had a firm understanding of what was going on. But we had a massive public response, or a public health response to it, and we nailed it. Another interesting sort of epidemic phenomenon, it was bird flu. Bird flu is happening in the United States. We don't know how much. This just makes me so angry, Kirby. Bird flu can be spread from birds to humans, from birds to other animals, including dogs and bovines. So it's been an issue among, for instance, cattle farmers. It has less propensity in spreading person to person, but here's the problem with bird flu, at least in its earliest iterations, its mortality rate was close to 30%. It was so bad that in the 80s or 90s, I forget what year this happened, there was an outbreak of bird flu among poultry on Hong Kong, which is an island, and they mandated that all of the poultry had to be killed immediately. They just X'd out all of the poultry on the entire island in an attempt to limit this infection. Because if this virus mutates from being communicable from bird to human to being communicable human to human, just duck, just put your head down and hope for the best because of that really, really high mortality rate. Okay. All right. Well, we're seeing bird flu. We're not seeing a 30% mortality rate. So something has happened to it to make it a little bit less virulent. But right now we are being deprived of tools to protect ourselves because our healthcare system has been systematically, purposefully, and recklessly dismantled.
Yeah, it's just, I can see why you're furious.
I mean, here's the thing. There's a person I follow on my favorite social media place right now is a place called Threads. And there's a person I follow there whose name I forget, but it's, someone with contacts at the CDC who sort of shares inside information that no one is publishing, but it's not verifiable, right? I can't quote them in any serious way because there's no published information. And there's no published information on purpose.
Right.
But things are a lot more serious than I'm going to stop now. I'm beginning to sound like a conspiracy theorist, and I'm really not. I would just like to have accurate and actionable information.
I'm getting the sense this is something I've never considered. I'm loving having this conversation with you. We are past our time, but
you're going to have a ball editing this.
It's okay. George Kuselius and Benny Vaughn went for 3 hours. So.
Oh my gosh. Oh la la.
Yeah.
Yeah. There you got some serious old timers there. George Kuselius. Wow. Okay.
Lovely, generous people too.
Yes.
I've been very blessed in this role that I'm doing right now. I'm getting the sense from hearing you talk that pathology can also tell a story. History tells us a story. But what I'm getting from this is, which I've never considered before, is that pathology tells us a history of people as well.
Yeah.
Can you run with that?
Oh, so many things. So many examples of this. Tuberculosis used to be the scariest disease.
Yeah. I was so hoping you would bring up tuberculosis.
Oh, okay. Well, here's the thing. Tuberculosis is on the rise. We're not being told when or where.
Right.
But so TB, before the mid-40s, tuberculosis was a leading cause of death, not just in like poor countries, but all over the world, including Europe and the United States. It has a rich cultural history. I don't, you got real excited. So you might be familiar with these concepts. I mean, tuberculosis was associated with vampirism because people would turn white and they'd get these big glowing eyes. It was considered a thing that would make people very ethereal and sort of spirit-like because you can't eat if you can't breathe. It shows up in literature all over the place. They didn't call it TB. They called it scrofula. They called it a whole bunch of different things. But it was a scourge. It killed millions of people. In the 1940s, we began to understand antibiotics and we developed some treatments for tuberculosis. And it was, no longer a deadly disease. The other thing that tuberculosis did here and elsewhere in the United States and elsewhere was, before there were antibiotics, the only way to treat it was only accessible to rich people, which was to go to a sanatorium, somewhere where there's lots of sunlight and the air is very dry. Well, the sanatoria, in the hopes that basically that you would outlive this bacterial infection and then you would heal, which happens. Those sanatoria became what are now, really famous high-end resorts. They began as TB refuges.
Let me pause. Do you see franchises as like little baby cousin grandchildren of those sanatoriums?
Franchises? No, not well. I don't know. Okay. I don't know. I mean, in the sense of having a place to go to be groomed, and I mean grooming in a positive way.
Like the primate.
In the primate way. In the primate way. Oh, I have a story about that too. Let's come back to that. Yeah, so TB was a scourge, and then we developed antibiotics. And then people got, well, the problem with the antibiotics is they made people feel really sick, and you had to take them for a really, really long time. And they would make you smell funny, and you couldn't go in the sunlight, and there was all kinds of hard things about taking the tuberculosis antibiotics. And it was like 6 months or more that you'd have to take them. So people got a little lackadaisical about finishing their antibiotics, and TB morphed. It, changed into drug-resistant tuberculosis. Here's the thing. Someone with an active case of drug-resistant TB is going to spread drug-resistant TB. So the thing that is now much more difficult and expensive to treat in me, if I have it and I cough on an airplane, which has happened, right? We have this on record. Someone with multiple drug-resistant tuberculosis coughing on an airplane, and then other people getting sick. All of those people are going to get multi-drug resistant TB, which is a much longer, much more expensive, much more hazardous treatment regimen, and also has the same death rate as untreated regular TB. And it didn't take long for us then to develop extremely drug-resistant TB. That's called XDR TB, which is not responsive to any of the modern antibiotics. And you have to go back to like penicillin to try and attack it, and it doesn't work very well. And because over time, this bacterium has changed, because we had this wonderful privilege of antibiotics, and we didn't, use them appropriately. And of course, we've seen this with things like MRSA, right? Methicillin-resistant staph, so there are diseases we can see change and morph over time, sometimes for the better, sometimes not so much. One of the things I'm really interested to watch over time is what happens with multiple sclerosis. So MS is an autoimmune disease in which the immune system attacks myelin coverings in the central nervous system, specifically in the central nervous system. If it happens in the peripheral nervous system, it's a different thing. And because of data gathered from soldiers, from people, well, not just soldiers, and people in the military over a prolonged period of time, we can see a very high correlation. We don't conflate correlation and causation, but we see this exceedingly high correlation between the risk for developing MS and having been exposed to Epstein-Barr virus, which is the virus that causes mononucleosis. Begging the question, if we can develop a vaccine for Epstein-Barr, will we see a decrease in MS? We may get to the point where MS just doesn't happen anymore because people are no longer having a severe Epstein-Barr infection. These are things that make you go, huh? So can I talk about primate grooming?
Can we hold off just a little bit to talk about TB just a little bit longer?
Sure.
Sorry, back to tuberculosis. First of all, there's a book out there. I'm a huge young adult fiction fan.
John Green.
Yeah. Have you read it? Everything Tuberculosis.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I haven't.
No, but he's a huge advocate for tuberculosis treatment and prevention. During COVID was the first time we saw a rise in tuberculosis in certain parts of the globe because all of the resources were going toward COVID instead of toward TB.
Right.
So we saw a rise in TB during that time. We're seeing a rise in TB in the United States now. Why? It's iffy. I don't know, but we're not being told about it. So if we can't gather data on it, we can't gather data on it.
And then also, if that was the end of your thought, don't let me interrupt you, Ruth.
No, I'm done.
Because far be it from me, someone who has essentially no understanding of pathology. My entry-level education did not have your book, Crime, Shame Against Humanity. I know. Can you believe there are programs out there that don't use it?
Yes, I have a friendly competitor, and she does a good job.
Well, we didn't have that pathology book either.
Oh.
We had no specific pathology book. So if it wasn't in our main massage education book, you didn't
learn it.
Right. So far be it from me to interrupt the pathology queen. But also, I just wanted to share this about TB. Arkansas is one of the first 5 to regulate the profession of massage in the country. We got our regulation in the same year that Oregon did, 1951, right after World War II, right after TB, or in the heights.
Soon after, yeah.
And it used to be a requirement. I don't know when it started to be a requirement, but when I got licensed in 2014, you had to get a TB test.
That's cool.
How recently, but after I got that, it is no longer a requirement.
Mm-hmm.
Riff on that if you want to. If not, just say, what an interesting story you tell, Kirby.
No, I think it is a real, I mean, I think it's vestigial, right? Left over from those times. We work intimately with people. You're in a small room with people who are breathing and coughing and whatever. TB is communicable through droplets. And it made sense to kind of establish people's TB status. It's so much rarer now than it used to be. Hopefully it stays that way.
Yeah.
And
Hopefully.
it is in fact treatable. I taught in Utah for 15 years. Of course, in Utah, there are many, many people who are members of the Church of Latter-day Saints. And I had a student who had come back from serving his mission in, I want to say Peru. He had served his church mission in Peru and came back and had to test for TB, and he was positive. At that time, I don't know that this is still happening, but there was a program called DOTS, called the Directly Observed Therapy Short Term, where they wouldn't trust you with your 6 months of antibiotics. Someone would come and check in with you on a regular basis to make sure you are taking your pills. Directly observed therapy.
Okay.
And he had that. He had someone who was like his babysitter to make sure he was taking his TB drugs. Expensive, yes. Less expensive than having him develop multiple drug-resistant TB, which would then, take 2 years to treat instead of 6 months and, cost in the hundreds of thousands of dollars.
All right. Interesting. Could I ask you to talk about polio?
Sure. Another great historical thing, right?
Comparable to TB or COVID or the influenza of the 20s or
So, God, this is fun. Polio, another viral infection, spread through oral fecal contamination. So people get polio by swimming in contaminated water or drinking contaminated water or whatever, like that. Oral fecal contamination. So it begins in the digestive tract, and in ways that actually, to my knowledge, are not even understood. It migrates from the digestive tract into the central nervous system, where it attacks specifically motor neurons. So if you think about a virus attacking the motor neurons of your leg is going to get very, very weak. And that's what we see, with polio. I was born in 1960. I know I was vaccinated for polio, but people in the generation immediately before me were not. And my mom had friends who had polio. And I remember seeing a lady with braces and walker and things like that. I have a good friend who's not much older than me who had polio as a child, and her treatment ended up not her. I'll come back to it in a moment, but her treatment ended up being problematic for her because of viral infection. Obviously it doesn't respond to antibiotics. And it was a scourge. Polio was the March of Dimes. The March of Dimes, which I think was initiated by Eleanor Roosevelt, was a fundraising effort to fight polio and to, is still around today, but not specifically for polio. Gosh, I'm scraping. I have so many interesting things to say about polio. One thing I want to say before I let it go is until COVID, the last case of live wild poliovirus, that is to say, by wild, I mean not the result of a weakened virus from a vaccine, okay? The last case of live wild poliovirus in the Western Hemisphere was in South America in 1979. And then we got weird about vaccines.
Yeah.
And we got weird about vaccines. And it's just so peculiar to me. I know that there was a case of polio in New York, and it's been tracked in the sewer systems. But I know there was at least one case of an adult developing polio and being paralyzed. I don't think he died, but I don't remember the specifics. But all of a sudden, it's on the radar again, which is to say, vaccinate your children.
I'll say it louder. Vaccinate your children. People don't trust vaccines anymore. Where do you think that started? Where does that come from? Do you have any thoughts?
I have many thoughts. I don't know how accurate they are. And I will confess to not, is this really true? I don't follow politics directly because it makes me sick. I mean, like literally, I can feel my blood pressure rising and it makes me sick to my stomach because it's so stressful to be in a time that is so polarizing. I mean, I thought George Bush was problematic. And, maybe some of your listeners don't agree with me on this. And I speak my truth, right?
Yeah, please do.
Yeah. So my lane is helping people be well-informed and safe in their practice of massage therapy. I think one of the things that's happened in the political environment, and this began in the first Trump administration, was permission to take a weird kind of pride in not being well educated. And that's very sad. That's very sad to me, because what that tells me is that along the line somewhere, people experience education as a scary, bad thing. That's not their fault, right? But to take pride and become famous or become, renowned for your pushing back at those stupid scientists is so contrary to trying to bring good into the world.
Well, and it's completely antithetical to the history of the United States.
I think one of the things that happened, and I don't know how this didn't have to be inevitable, but one of the things that happened was because we were learning so much about COVID so fast that every time you looked at another headline, it looked like, oh, okay, everything we understood yesterday is wrong, and now here's this new understanding. And so it made the science look untrustworthy because two things happened. One is we didn't emphasize hard enough that the answer science provides changes, and that means it's working, right? Science isn't truth. Science is moving us closer to something that we can call true. And so that takes a nuance of understanding, and people wanted hard and fast, give me something to do that I know is going to work, answers.
Right.
And there weren't any, and that is freaking terrifying.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's one thing that happened. And what fit into that was I think, and I mean, I say we, the royal we, academic papers, scientific papers on COVID were being released before they were peer reviewed because speed was of the essence, and good peer review takes a lot of time.
Yeah.
And so that added to the sense of unreliability. And then we had, leadership that was unreliable, and those things all sort of congregated to create a state where people didn't trust anything, especially the things they'd been told to trust all their lives.
Right.
And I think it's so peculiar because, in my opinion, Operation Warp Speed was a swear word triumph.
Yeah.
And he could have won the Nobel Peace Prize for that.
Sure.
Right? For creating an environment where we got on top of a vaccine so effective and so fast that it saved millions of lives. There are things I don't understand.
Me either.
I mean, there have always been people who are anti-vaccine or anti-vaccine mandates.
Well, that's what I was going to ask you, because there were people who were even pushing back against vaccines. They didn't trust vaccines before COVID-19. Like, I can remember, like 2015, there were people who were that's where I started to really take notice of it, was like mid 2010s. You were vaccinated for polio because your parents, I'm assuming, decided that was good for you. I was vaccinated.
Well, and I mean, it came up at a time when if you're going to go to public school, here's your list. Come back when you have this list, right? Yeah, I mean, it was mandated. And there are people who object to being told what to do, especially about injecting things into their children. And I get that. But I think there was a failure in public education and a failure in, oh gosh, is this the right word? Branding or marketing. It became more attractive to buck the system than to say, yes, I'm getting on board this public health train, right? I am in it for the greater good. Sign me up for that sweet, sweet herd immunity.
Put that on a bumper sticker.
Yeah. And I get that that's part of human nature, I suppose, that we need to address better than we do. I feel really sad for the people who feel like education is bad, because it means somewhere along the line their education did not serve them. That's not their fault.
Yeah. Can you pinpoint where because I will point to, we started to distrust authority at Watergate or
long before, I think, the war. Right, the Vietnam War.
Yeah.
And before that, the Civil Rights Movement. And before that is the Make America Great Again era, which was awesome for affluent white people who were cisgendered.
Right.
And pretty terrible for everybody else. There was a sort of a monolith of attitudes. Everybody watched the same news. Everybody read the same newspapers. There were good guys and bad guys, because at the end of World War II, there were, in fact, good guys and bad guys. It was kind of neat to have a conflict where there was a really clear, and then there was the Korean War where it got really, really fuzzy. And then there was the Vietnam War where it was like, what? You want me to do what now? People began to do the other American thing, which is to think for themselves. And now we're at a point where we're thinking for ourselves to the extent where we are ignoring logic and reason.
Yeah. Yay. You have to laugh to keep from crying sometimes.
Well, you have to find ways to be of service, which is what we're doing right now. But did you know that polio is very much part of the early history of massage therapy as we know it today?
Share more. Teach me.
Really? Are you serious? You don't know about Sister Kinney?
It's not ringing bells. I'm sorry.
Oh, wow. All right. You'll have to look
Catch
up
me
the
learning.
dates.
Okay.
You'll have to look up the dates. So in Australia, I want to say maybe the 30s or 40s, somewhere in there, in the 20th century, children were badly affected by polio and having shriveled limbs because of this viral attack on their motor neurons. And this nurse named Sister Kinney, because all the nurses were sisters, Kinney, Kinney, developed a protocol where she massaged really, really rigorously these weakened limbs. And the people that she massaged regained, not full function, right? But regained much more function than anyone thought they would ever do. And this became a thing to point to when we were looking at manipulating muscles as a way to promote health. It really was influenced by the work of Sister Kinney in Australia in the 30s or 40s. Isn't that fascinating?
It is.
It might have even been before then. I don't remember.
I feel like
Anyway,
I've heard.
Sister Kinney and polio and massage. Look that Google that.
Yeah, see what comes up. Or if
Yeah.
not, somebody write a story or like write a text because
Yeah.
that's what I mean. That's why I feel like what we're doing here at the society is so important because stories like that, maybe they get told in passing, but they don't, if you don't really understand it and you can't tie polio to massage to Sister Kin, like if you can't thread those together well, it's lost from our story. And I don't think it should be anymore. I prefer traveling on bus to airplanes. Am I more safer doing that, Ruth, than
Oh, in terms of air quality? No. No, actually, in spite of all that scary story I told you about tuberculosis, the air quality on airplanes is actually really good
okay?
because they're turning over the air all the time.
All right.
It didn't, I mean, back when they allowed smoking,
Yeah.
which was, again, not that long ago. I got married in 1987. Yeah, I got married in 1987. And my husband worked for Delta Airlines. And so we got to fly, standby for free. But very often those seats would be, on those airplanes would recently have been smoking seats. There were ashtrays in yeah. That's neither here nor there.
Well, it has to do with health, and there's all
It
kinds of
does. It does. And changes in attitudes, right?
I mean, like, let's track, they say, this generation has practically eliminated tobacco. You're like, it's beginning to become less and less.
It's way under 70, it's way under 25% of the people in the United States who are tobacco smokers at this time. I don't know if that number includes tobacco vaping or not. But I grew up with two smoker. I mean, my mom was a heavy smoker. My dad smoked cigars. I live with a chronic cough, and I point at least partly to that history, along with a bunch of other things that I had no control over. So talking about my cough is always a trigger, so you can leave that one in.
Right. I still want to let you talk about primates. Can I ask? And I'm sure primates relates to pathology in some way. So I might edit this to the very last, but what should I be most concerned or afraid about right now in terms of pathology?
I don't want people to be afraid of anything.
Yeah.
Right? Knowledge is the best defense. I think there are a number of things to be concerned about. One is our health system, our healthcare system, and the availability of accurate and actionable data about what's happening, especially with communicable diseases. So that's one thing, we need to advocate for. The other concern I have is in the use of AI machines in lieu of learning, because when the oil hits the skin, it's between you and your client, your skills, your history, your education, your filters, their values, their priorities, the things they like best and the things they like least. And ChatGPT or Perplexity or Claude or any of the things are never going to help you find what that spot is. So I am here to curate the variables, let you know some things that are that are likely to have a positive effect, some things that are likely to have a negative effect based on what we understand about this disease, which is changing every minute. But ultimately, the decision making has to be you, the therapist, and not your Google machine.
All right. Talk to me about grooming in primates.
Oh, okay. So there's this fabulous book that I think every massage therapist should own. It's called Why Zebras Don't Get Ulcers. It is by a neuroscientist named Robert Sapolsky, and I got to meet him once, which was really cool. Was in a meeting and he called on me to answer a question, so I could ask him a question. I said, "Hi, Ruth Werner, charter member of the Robert Sapolsky fan club." He's fairly famous. He was on Nova specials and things like that. So he wrote Why Zebras Don't Get Ulcers is a book on the physiology of stress.
Okay.
Right. And the reason zebras don't get ulcers is that they have the opportunity to run away. And it's the action of running away that burns through those stress-related hormones that helps to reestablish equilibrium. If you think about human beings, our most sort of in your face, oh my God, I'm going to die kind of stress is not being chased by a lion. It is sitting strapped down in a small enclosed space and hoping to God you don't flip over or get T-boned or whatever. And we don't have that opportunity to burn through those. And that's neither here nor there. So one of the things that Dr. Sapolsky used to do is go in the summer times, he would go to Africa and study baboon tribes to see a variety of things. And he only could dart the males because it was too risky with females if they were nursing or pregnant or whatever. So he would dart the males and then do a bunch of blood tests to see who was most successful. And by successful, the measure there was not who's spreading the most DNA. The measure for successful in this instance was who is living the longest with the least disease. I think that's a pretty good metric for success, right? Who's living the longest with the least disease.
Right.
And it was not the males who were spreading out the most DNA because they were that having to constantly to fight off the other ones. It was the males who engaged in the most non-sexual grooming. Non-sexual grooming. Non-sexual grooming.
What does that sound like?
What does that sound like?
It's
exactly what we do.
Yeah.
That's precisely what we do. And that's one reason I really kind of love the partnership between massage and aesthetics. We can make a thing about massages, medical massages, clinical massages, whatever, but massage is also grooming. And one of the reasons I love my hairdresser is she gives the best scalp on the planet, right? So non-sexual grooming is important to our well-being.
Yeah.
And that sort of brings us back around to what does touch mean?
I haven't cracked the code yet, so if you have any answers, let me know. Yeah, awesome. I love that. You've been very generous with your time today, Ruth. Let me move us into some closing thoughts. All right, wait, hold on. I just have to, because I've taken it and I love it and I wish more people would take it and be aware of it, I'm going to do a plug for you, your online resource, your education it's an ethic course. The
doctor's note?
Is not good enough and what is better. Because to go back to our early discussion about franchises still ask for clients to bring in doctor's notes. And what do we have to do to turn the tide? I know, I'm with you because I work for a franchise. Mm-hmm. And every time they say it, I'm just like, tomatoes, 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 boo. Learn better, do better. So expand on that,
I actually have a recent podcast. I think it was like last month or the month before, where I interviewed someone who runs spas about policy around doctor's notes or getting clearance for massage. And she had some interesting things to say. So that might be worth a listen. We love having someone tell us what to do. Some people just adore having someone tell them what to do. And they want a black and white, yes or no, this is safe, this is not safe kind of answer, which is something that you're not going to get from my pathology book. Because we, the massage therapists, are responsible for every decision we make in that session room. And if a doctor's note says, yes, this person is cleared for massage, and they have preeclampsia, which is, dangerous prenatal issue with high blood pressure and risk for birth defects and a bunch of other things. If you hurt that client, if you hurt their baby, you're the one who did it, not their doctor.
Right.
And that doctor's note will not protect you from the ethical responsibility or the moral responsibility or even from the legal responsibility. So one of the things I do in the course that I really, really emphasize and would love for everybody to do is to emphasize the difference between having a consultation with a knowledgeable healthcare provider and asking for permission to do our work. Those are two really different things. And in terms of having an employer that wants a clearance, I mean, what are we going to do? We can tell them that this doesn't work and there's legal precedent for people being sued, even though they had a doctor's note. It's just that that stuff never makes it all the way to court because it gets settled first. That's what malpractice insurance is for. But I can speak from experience that people have been sued for causing damage to clients even when there's been a doctor's note.
I'm on a rampage. How do we get like a huge billboard that just says a doctor's note is not good enough?
Yeah.
It's a mindset.
I don't know. Maybe you and I can work together and build an audience and do a one-time freebie worldwide event of a doctor's note is not good enough and just do it live.
Well, I
And
just have to bring it up, Ruth, because I think it's so important that I feel like franchise employees are particularly vulnerable to this because they're being told what to do by their employers, and then they're being told by doctors that they're clear to do massage. And that's two stacks of like people that you feel are above you, but you're the individual, you are the practitioner that are making these calls. Ultimately, it's you and your license and that client.
it's true. It's true. And the person, the owner of the franchise may or may not know anything about massage therapy and its risks.
Right.
And certainly doctors do not have the responsibility to know anything about your work. It's not their job, not their job to tell you if your work is safe. And I brought this up with my own GP, who, by the way, I'm seeing today. Yay! I brought this up with my own GP when I was writing that course. And he said he'd never had a massage therapist ask him for clearance. And he said, I wouldn't do that anyway. They're not gonna make mistakes on my license. So
Right. That's just ridiculous.
yeah.
But it's just one of those things that tradition and legacy has thrived.
Well, it's certainly what I was taught when I was in massage school. If you have any questions, call the doctor. Like that's gonna work.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't call the doctor about your own health situation and get someone on the phone. You know, what we have now, and I will give all kinds of credit where it's due. We have, depending on what healthcare system you're in, my chart or whatever version of electronic health record keeping system you use. I had a blood draw last week because I'm getting ready for my checkup. I had the results of that blood draw in my inbox before I got home from that appointment. It was awesome.
Yeah.
And so a thing we can do now is you can write, and this is in the course, you can write a short note saying, Mrs. Smith wants massage. Here are my concerns. Can you give me some input on this? And ask your client to upload it to my chart. And you're not going to get an instant response because doctors aren't sitting around twiddling their thumbs waiting for a message to be sent to them.
From the
But you
massage
probably
therapist.
get something back within a few days. Not directly to you, but by way of your client, because it would be inappropriate without your client's permission to communicate with their doctor privately. But I mean, there are lines of communication that are available that we maybe don't use and could use more productively. But I don't know what to do about this quandary of owners looking for other people to determine safety. That's, when they hired you, they are hiring your education. Your education was meant to help you make those decisions.
I could go on such a tangent about franchise employees because like you said, they're not prepared to be employees from their traditional massage therapy education. And then we're told what to do constantly. And we need to really understand that the buck stops here. And we're just not prepared for that when we accept an employment situation. Anyway, I'll let that be the final word on the matter. Let's talk just a little bit about history and go into some closing thoughts. Particularly, I'm interested in maybe your perspective as a former president of the Massage Therapy Foundation. What do you think about, in terms of history research, where that fits in, how that could be beneficial to massage therapists?
That's a fascinating question.
I think so too.
Yeah, because our mutual friend Corey is also very interested in this. Corey Rivera from Healwell. I mean, I think it's interesting because it's interesting. I think it's interesting because, if we don't learn from our past, we're bound to repeat it. And there's a lot of things the profession has done very well.
Yeah.
Including, holding on to its soul, if you like.
So
right?
far.
So far. Interestingly, the person I interviewed for that podcast went on an entirely different tangent about the future of massage machines as opposed to hands, and who's going to like that better? Because there's a population of people who don't actually want someone else's hands touching them, but they still want the experience of having been manipulated. Kirby, I don't have a specific answer for you about what benefit knowing massage history will bring to the average typical massage therapist. I think for thought leaders, for people who want to get involved in influencing the future of the profession, it's absolutely vital. Again, because to avoid making the mistakes of the past. But for instance, your colleagues at the franchise
Yeah.
who are not particularly interested and aren't volunteering for AMTA or the Alliance or the Foundation or the, whatever other many other opportunities there are to volunteer. And they just, they want to do their job and they want to make a decent living and they want to have their job be over when their job is over. God, what would that be like? I can't speak to how knowledge of the richness of our past would improve their quality of life or improve their profession, except that it's rich. And I think we can treasure it. Now that I think of it, I mean, it really is beautiful. I have Patricia Benjamin's book. It's sort of calling to me. It's in a bookshelf behind the screen, where she really dove deep into our roots. I think it's important to document that, but that's important for the profession as sort of an abstract rather than for the individual practitioner. That might be a disappointing answer for you. I'm sorry.
Well, no, it just means that there's work to do to bridge the gap between massage therapy as the abstract to the practitioner.
Yes. Yes. And part of that is actually, defining some things like what is massage therapy. And the work of Ambler Kennedy there has been absolutely pivotal. Again, it's a little bit of herding cats, right? How to get people to acknowledge, there's a difference between massage and massage therapy, two different things.
Right.
And massage therapy practice, a third different thing.
Well, and each one of those has meant something different at particular points in history.
Right. Exactly so.
All right. Do you hold on to anything as someone who was an MTF president, someone who's chaired committees, particularly with the AFMTE? I'm wondering, do you have collections of anything of historical significance?
No.
Oh, Ruth.
No, not my thing. Not my thing. I mean, I have books. Yeah, what have I kept? I mean, can you hang on for a second? Let me get something for you.
Please, I will hold on.
You probably have seen this. Copyright 1972. As it happens, it's a signed one. But I think I bought it used because there's no name in it. And, when I talked about how draping is optional, yeah, but I bought this. I think when I had just enrolled in massage school, and I thought, oh, look, it's a book about massage. I'll learn it here. And I was like, oh. So
Some pretty risque illustrations in there.
Yes. Yes. But again, it's a product of the SLN movement. And it was in Seattle. I mean, everybody had this book in the early 80s. So gosh. No, I don't hold on to old stuff. I mean, I have my massage table. So my massage table I bought from a friend for 5 massages and $25.
Wow.
And it is built of 3/4-inch plywood with a piano hinge and, fold out wooden legs. It weighed about 40 pounds. And it had like a cupboard door handle on it instead of like a handle that flops. It weighed a ton and it did not have a face cradle. And it is now my sewing table.
I have a feeling, I can't speak about numbers or inflation, but I think you may have gotten the short end of the stick if you did that for 5 massages and $25.
Well, it was while I was still a student. So, but that's the thing I lugged uphill through the snow both ways. And we liked it, into whoever's living room we were meeting in that week.
Well, it is a shame because there's no repository for massage history. And so
you spoken to Judy
Calvert.
Yeah. I mean, that's where I would go.
For sure.
Oh, someone else. Zerlin and Chris Deary.
I love the Dearys. All right, I'm going to jump us into our closing thoughts.
Okay, good.
What are you most proud of in your career when you take a moment, pause, and look back on it?
That's easy. That's really easy. I made life easier for a bunch of people.
The book?
What else? Through the book, through teaching, through helping massage therapists feel more confident and more safe about the work that they do. I don't want to do that work, but it is vital. It is so important that work of putting your hands on people in a loving, non-judgmental way. And I have made that safer and more possible for a whole bunch of people. And I am so proud of that.
Excellent. And yeah, the podcast, I listen to it every chance I get. So yeah, making our work easier. I think so.
I'm working on it.
Tell
I have a
me,
new one dropping. Today's Monday, dropping tomorrow. There's a new one coming tomorrow.
keep my ears open for that. If you could record one historical figure's account of massage therapy, I'll even open this up because you are pathology to someone historical in the pathology sense, someone that's no longer with us, someone that's deceased now. Who would you choose and why?
Well, it would be really interesting to talk to Sister Kinney about what drove her to try this out. Another person I would love to know more about was a German anatomist, I think, called Rudolf Virchow, Virchow, who developed Virchow's triad, which is still taught today as the three major contributors to blood clotting, which is hypercoagulability, endothelial damage, and stasis. He's the one who put those three things together. When you have these three things, something bad is going to happen. And it's so elegant and so simple. And I would be really interested to talk to him about those discoveries.
All right. Interesting. I love that.
I'm trying to think of other. Yeah, you got me.
Those are good
Stumped.
answers. I did it.
Yeah, you did. You stumped the pathology teacher. Well done.
Just kidding. On the flip side of that, Ruth, you've mentioned a few names already. You've given great potential future podcasts. Is there anyone else, though, that comes to top of the mind that should really be sitting where you are right now and be on this podcast?
Let's see. If you've talked to Benny and George, I mean, it'd be interesting for you to talk to Whitney, but Whitney and Benny's backstories have a lot of overlap. That's the best I can
Those are
can
good
give to you
answers.
right now. I think they're much younger than me. They've been in the profession for less long, but they are having very, very profound influence on the future of massage therapy research. And that's Nikki Monk, Dr. Monk, and Dr. Kennedy. So if you'd like connection with them, I can hook you up.
Yeah, I'd love that too. Yeah, get them on the pod. I haven't said this yet publicly, but I kind of feel bad calling this a podcast because to me, what they really are oral history interviews more
Yeah.
than they are podcasts. Anyway, final notes. Before we go, what are you up to now? How can listeners learn more about your work, connect with you, or support anything that you're doing right now?
Thank you. I could tell you what I'm working on now, but I'd have to kill you.
Oh,
Uh,
that's almost
no, that's not really true. No, I am beginning work on the next edition of my book.
it never ends, does it?
So eighth edition. This is going to be the last one I'm going to do. After this one, I'm gonna bow out.
Really?
Well, I just turned 65, Kirby. All I want to do is sew. All I want to do is just sit at my sewing machine because I'm always making and I don't keep them because what's the point? So I am working on the next edition of my book. I continue to be a columnist for Massage and Bodywork magazine. The next article I have coming out with them is on the spectrum of traumatic brain injury, and I'm really happy with that one. The one that just published, I'm really happy about. It's about fainting. And my interview, because I always, or my video that goes with, is with my favorite paramedic, who is my son. So he let me, so he talked about fainting as a phenomenon as a first responder, and that was really neat. And I will give you guys, we haven't started an official campaign for it yet, but I am launching in 2026 an opportunity, if you like. I will be doing 10 classes over the course of the year. That the working title right now is Practical Pathology, Real Questions, Real Answers. These will be live webinars, 90 minutes, one a month, but I'm going to take 2 months off. They will begin with a discussion of whatever the disease of the month is. So for instance, January thyroid disease is a thing. It's like the thyroid disease recognition month or something. So we'll talk about hypo and hyperthyroid, and then for the rest of the time, the floor will be open for participants to bring in their interesting questions or concerns about pathologies that they are seeing, and it will be kept very small. So I will only be accepting 10 participants. If it goes beyond that, we will open up a second cohort.
Ooh.
But yeah, practical pathology, real questions, real answers, and be looking for that. And you can find me and get on my email list at ruthwerner.com,
And you can take a doctor's note is not good enough.
where you can find my online self-paced, ethics credited CE class called A Doctor's Note is Not Good Enough. And what is better?
Yes.
What is this? What does that mean?
Clapping, it's very
Clapping?
good. Yes. It's from like the Harlem Ballroom.
Oh,
Yeah.
all right.
Yeah. We'll talk. All right. Last thing, is there anything we didn't cover that you would like to add? The mic is all yours, Ruth.
If you are not registered to vote, get registered to vote.
Period.
And vote for the candidates who are not necessarily perfect, but who come closest to your worldview and your priorities for what is good for all of us. And that's my plea.
I mean, I couldn't have said it any better. I wanted to vote for the most compassionate person. That's top on mine right now because we're missing a lot of that. But yeah, get registered to vote, people.
Yeah. And don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good.
Yeah, you're not getting married to someone. You're choosing someone.
Exactly. You're choosing the one who's going to have the best impact on the most people.
You're choosing someone to govern.
Yep.
All right. Well, Ruth Werner, I could go on talking until the cows come home with you.
Yeah, and me too, but I have some things I need to do before my next meeting. So
You have been more than generous. I thank you so much. You're welcome back here anytime.
oh, thank you so much, Kirby, and good luck with the podcast. I'm really delighted that you're doing this. And maybe at some point you'll turn it into a book.
Ooh, there we go. There's an
There
idea.
you go.
Thank you so much.
All
Ruth.
right. Take care, friend.
If you enjoyed this podcast, please consider donating to the Society of Massage Archives so we can continue to bring you this episode and other resources to fulfill our mission of preserving and integrating the historical knowledge of massage therapy's professional advocacy and traditional techniques to guide and enrich our contemporary practices. Thank you. You have been listening to the Hands of History podcast, a production of the Society of Massage Archives. You can learn more about the Society at societyofmassagearchives.org. We are also on Facebook and Instagram. Do you know someone whose hands have helped shape the practice of massage? If you or someone you know would make a great guest for future episodes of this podcast, please email the Society at societyofmassagearchives@gmail.com. Society of Massage Archives, all one word, @gmail.com.